Okay, so welcome once again to the podcast presented by Trynyty, back this week in English. As usual, my name is Cody LaCroix. I'm one of the co-founders of Trynyty, Canada's only ride-around and operated freestyle scooter brand. And with me again this week is my co-host and co-founder of Trynyty, of course, Mr. Lloyd Bureau.
How's it going, everybody?
And our guest with us this week, funny enough, is Lloyd's former roommate, former football team, and now Montreal Alouettes linebacker, Jean-Gab Poulin. Jean-Gab, pleasure to have you here. How's it going, my man?
Very good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, for those who don't know, like I said, Jean-Gab is Lloyd's former roommate and now killing it in the CFL, playing for the Alouettes, of course. Dealing with a bit of injury right now, but coming back real soon. Lloyd, super stoked to have you in here, obviously. I'm not the biggest football plan, but you've got the huge amount of knowledge, so I think having you here is going to be great. What's it been like watching one of your good buddies transition out of college into the pros?
It's crazy. I'm still every day trying to figure out how this all happened, but when you look back, it's quite incredible. Jean-Gab and I have been friends for over 10 years now. We spent 6 full years playing football side by side together, the same position. So I had a front row seat to seeing all of Jean-Gab's evolution throughout the years. And, the first time we met in high school and played together, I had a feeling he would go pretty far in his career. So today he's in his second year playing for the Alouettes of Montreal, a native Saint-Nicolas in Quebec, not too far from, where we grew up. So yeah, Jean-Gab, how's it going?
Man, I'm good. I'm really happy to be here. It feels kind of weird to be sitting here and talking about it because, like you said, we've been friends and roommates for 6 years. Not only did we play together for 6, but we live together. So when you live with someone, you get to experience like the behind the scene a little bit, because everything can seem fine on the practice field and in the locker room, but when you go home, sometimes there's other stuff going on. But Lloyd and I got to see all that behind the scene, and we got to really know each other through living together like that. So yeah, I'm pretty happy.
Still
to be
friends
here with
to
you
this
guys.
day.
Yeah,
so
yeah, we didn't hate each other too much, or didn't I don't know how to say it properly. We didn't annoy each other too much. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good to have been a part of the making of, and coming off of a great Vanier Cup win in 2017 season. With the Western Mustangs, and Jean-Gab was then drafted for the Alouettes. Remind me the draft position.
I was in the third round. I was 22nd overall, 22nd, I think.
That's right. Right. So, yeah, just a great outcome, and finished his first year, played a ton of special teams. Coming back this season, once again, big leader, taking a position on the special teams units, and unfortunately got hurt a little bit recently. So, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were playing a game in Moncton against Toronto, and I got pushed, almost fell, and I tried to catch myself with my foot, and I felt like a little pop or something. And at first, I didn't think of much. I didn't think much about it. Went back on the sideline. Went back for the next play, and I couldn't push off with my foot. So I went back to see our physios, and I was like, hey, can you just? I thought it was my big toe, so I was like, can you just tape my toe? I'll try it. Mm-hmm. I was able to finish the game, but I had to go see my coaches and be like, hey, can you put me on the other side? I can't really plant with that leg. Luckily, it was kind of midway through the third quarter, so I didn't have that much playing time left.
Right.
But then when I woke up the next morning and we saw each other the next morning,
yeah,
that's the funny part. My foot was super swollen. I couldn't put any weight on it, so called the physios right away. We got an MRI done, and I kind of injured some ligaments in my foot. So it's been a slow process. The doctor was saying somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks. Yep. I'm on week 6 now, and just started running this morning, so I'm pretty happy about it. Hopefully I can be back on the field soon.
That's fantastic, because you guys are having a pretty killer season, right?
Yeah, we are, man. It's been crazy, especially looking back at what we did last year, where we didn't make the playoffs, and we weren't even close at any point during the season. This year, last Saturday when we clinched, it was a very, very special feeling, and everybody is super excited, but nobody feels like we're done yet. Nobody feels that we've accomplished anything now. We just have a chance to do something special. So that's the cool part about it. It's just the beginning, Being in the playoffs is just a chance to do something big. So, yeah, We're very excited.
And you said, so you've clinched, and in the CFL, how many games per season is there? Because I'm gonna be the one asking the more basic questions that Lloyd might not be asking. I'm just figuring out the difference between zone and man coverage and things like that. So the CFL, I know there's 3 downs instead of 4, but how many games in a season?
We play 18 regular season games with 2 preseason games. And then if you make it to the Grey Cup, which is our championship, you have to play between 2 and 3 playoff games.
Okay, interesting. And you said you mentioned you've clinched, and generally about how many wins is it going to take for you to be able to clinch?
We got lucky this year because it works by divisions, right? So we're on the East Division. There's 4 teams, and the top 3 teams make it. But this year, the bottom 2 of our division is struggling a little bit. They don't have a lot of wins. And all we got to do is be better than them. So I think they got 2 and 3 wins at the moment we're speaking right now. So for us, all we needed was 8 wins right now. But usually to clinch playoffs, I want to say you need somewhere between 9 and 11, depending on the strength of your opponents.
All right, okay, so that's good to know. And obviously being injured, that must be a relief to know that the season is going to stretch into the post. And what's it been like on the side? Is this your first time being injured since you've become a real professional player?
Yeah, it's my first time being on the sideline. At first I was really I don't want to say depressed, but I was down. It was tough. But,
it's different.
It is very different. You feel kind of useless. You don't know. And then I realized that I don't have to be useless. I can be on the sideline and try to be the best teammate that I can be. And I put all my focus on that. On game days, I try to help. I carry usually like the play sheets. So if somebody wants to see something, I can show it to them. And I'm just walking around like talking with the guys. Hey, what do you see? I tell them what I see. And we just try to talk about it. And I try to still be involved as much as possible. Definitely different because there's a lot of emotion still, but you can't really...
it almost feels like something's missing, right?
Yeah, it does.
So funny enough, about 5 weeks ago, I injured my left ankle as well. And I didn't think it was too serious at the time. And now I'm actually going on Thursday to get it checked out because I still can't ride. And it's crazy because when you're used to doing something, for me, 2-3 times a week, for you, obviously more than that, and then just gets taken away. It's depressed is a pretty strong word, but I feel like it's almost pretty accurate because for you guys, obviously it's your career. For us, it's what we do all the time, and they're 2 very different sports. Obviously, being an individual action sport versus the team sport, it's 2 very different things. But the feeling that we share when it's taken away from us is something we can both understand.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's tough to handle, and it's important to have a good support system, and I think that. You do and I do as well, and I think that's the biggest thing, And playing football, it's good because you got the whole team, and being able to be surrounded by a whole team that's your support system. So I figure 100%. I'm gonna invest myself as much as I can in that and see what happens. And so far, it's been pretty good.
It's cool to hear that you're still contributing as well. I mean, obviously, I don't get to ride, but I can still kind of help the guys out when I can, try to film or coordinate the sessions, whatever. Be there just to show your support. It's still like a very communal thing.
It is.
Even though it's an individual sport and you guys obviously have the team. So hopefully you'll be back soon.
Hopefully. That's
and
the
like
plan.
You said, you're back to running.
So I ran for the first time this morning, so it's pretty nice.
Obviously the team's got someone who's helping you with your rehabilitation, and they've got you kind of on a tentative schedule. So what's the shift been like going from playing to full-on recovery mode?
The shift isn't that bad because we still have kind of the same working hours, except I have to be there a little bit earlier. So right now I have to be there at 7 a.m. in the morning. I get my treatments up until about 8:15. And then from 8:30 to 11, we're in meetings, we're watching film. So I can still be part of that because I don't want the mental aspect of the game to go away. And then while the guys are at practice, I go to the gym with my physical trainer, and then we go through exercise and try to work around, keep my strength, keep my speed, keep my conditioning, and also do more specific injury rehabilitation work. And then I usually finish that once the guys finish practice, so then I can go back, watch more film with them, or even kind of just hang around and still be part of it. So all I really miss is practice, but that's where most of it happens. That's where most of the story, like the guys come back and they talk about, oh, remember that play? And I was like, I don't remember that play. So it's kind of, it's tough, but at least schedule-wise, it's not that big of a difference.
That's pretty cool. So Lloyd obviously mentioned this is your second year in the CFL. You played at Western for 3-4 years?
4 years.
Four years. All right, awesome. And how old are you now?
I'm 25, just turned 25.
So you're 94 then?
Yeah, I'm 94.
Okay, cool. And how young were you the first time you played football?
I started in grade 11. No, not grade 11. Grade 7. Grade 7 is second one, right?
Yeah, that would be grade 7.
So I started in grade 7, so I was maybe like 12, 13 years
11
old.
or 12.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Not too bad. And that was just through school or like in the league?
Yeah, it was in high school. So my dad coached football for as long as I can remember. So I kind of grew up in a football family. So,
right.
I remember watching football with him when I was a little kid. So for me, playing was important. And in Quebec City, there's really no elementary school football. Like before grade 7, you can't really find, except like Mini Rougeard, I guess would be a good example.
Yeah, there's a couple.
But they're more like football camps than football leagues.
Right.
So for me, it was important when I went to high school to find one of the best high schools to play the sport. So SSF, where Lloyd and I actually met, is where I decided to go. So
and even at that point, you're saying you based sort of where you wanted to go to high school off of the football program. So from even 11, 12 years old, you had been planning to take football as far as you could go, or you just wanted to plan to see what you could do with it?
I guess I wanted to try it first.
Right.
I'd never played before I went there, but I based my decision off it, which is kind of weird. But
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I wanted to try it, and I wanted to try it in the best environment possible, and that was SSF. So yeah, that's what I went. And then as soon as I tried it, I want to say actually my first year was a little bit harder because I was very, very undersized as a kid.
Yeah, that's what I remember. You actually struggled in your first couple of years playing. So, testament to your resilience.
Yeah, I was a very, very small. I don't even think I was 100 pounds in grade 7. So I was struggling. Damn. I was getting like, I still really, like, I had like a lot of will, but physically I couldn't keep up. And then I was very thankful for puberty that hit around like grade 9. So yeah.
Shout out to puberty, man.
Yeah.
Lloyd, same question for you. When did you start playing football?
Same time.
So around 12, 13 years old?
Yeah, I was 11 years old actually. I never knew about football at that time either. I just was going to school, and my sister was like, "Hey, I heard there's football tryouts. Go." And I was like, "Well, why?" It's like, "No, just go. You're gonna make some friends. I know you're gonna love it. Just go try it out." And I fell in love. I was like, I can actually run and hit people and like expend all that energy, and it's okay. Yep. And even encouraged, like, let's do this.
That's awesome. So you guys both started when you were 12, and you shared a pretty similar adventure. And at what point for you did you think, you know what, this is not just what I'm going to do at school. This is where I'm going to try to put as much time as possible to hopefully make a career out of it?
I want to say make a career out of it was came a lot later than when I decided to invest all of myself into it. You know, I really fell in love with the game, and I was very passionate about it. So to me, it was just about investing myself 100% into it, and I never really think, okay, you know, I'm gonna play in the CFL, I'm gonna play in the NFL, or whatever. It was more about what can I do to be the best football player that I can be, because I love this so much, so I'm just gonna focus on that.
Right.
And then I want to say it wasn't until late university that I realized that, you know what, I actually have a real shot of doing something good with this. So they're two very different kind of milestones, I want to say.
Right. I think early on, Jean-Gab was finding quite a bit of success on the field in his last couple of years of high school, starting on the big team his first year, and then winning a couple of MVP awards, kind of getting a sense that he was actually improving quicker than his peers. And when we got to pick our CJEP, then all the CJEPs were knocking on our school's door because they wanted to talk to Jean-Gab. Luckily, I was right beside, so I got to talk to them too. Nice. But yeah, throughout that process, I think in that next step, we kind of got a sense of what he could do. And when we got to CJEP, I think it's too little to say that it was a pretty fantastic career he had at Vanier College.
Yeah, the CJEP experience was crazy, and it was kind of, like Lloyd said, it was kind of towards the end of high school. You know, right before puberty hit, I was tired of getting bullied on the field, so that's when I started to work out. And I don't know what happened. I started working out, and at the same time, I had my puberty. So in my head, it's kind of like, wow, you know, I'm working out, and I just gained 8 inches, and now and then right after that I started having success. So in my head it was kind of like, okay, if you put in a lot of work, really good things happen. And then I kind of kept that going at Vanier, and then it was pretty.
I think we can make the parallel with action sport as well. You know, this is a team sport, but there's a huge individual component that goes into the training, into the personal development, and understanding your relationship with the space around you, understanding the relationship between your efforts and your results. And it's definitely something that we can build on, and that, you know, growing up, it's a concept that more and more kids need to engage in and find that thing that they love and that they can throw all of their energy at fully and really, really develop themselves to their full ability.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up a good point. Like, football is a team sport, but the only way to help the team is by focusing on being the best player that you can be. So it becomes a very individual sport fairly quick when you look at it, especially in the off season with your whole like physical preparation and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely similarities in that aspect for sure.
All right. So I'm not sure why I had this thought, but I was getting ready last night thinking about this podcast. And I know at some point you had mentioned that sometimes football players will walk around eating peanut butter. And I thought this was just the weirdest thing. Can you explain to me why this is a thing?
Yeah, well, yeah, sometimes like I'm guilty of that a little bit. You know, sometimes our days are, especially like in training camp or stuff like that, our days are so packed with physical activity. You can be working out for maybe like 6 to 7 hours a day in terms of like practice and then going to the gym and then more practice and then meetings. You're just trying to fuel your body with calories, and peanut butter is super calorie dense and it's pretty good. It's pretty easy to down, like, with a banana or something. So yeah, it's a good snack to have.
So is there any other secret snacks like that we should know about?
It's funny because I'm still using peanut butter. Like, my go-to snack is like apples and peanut butter. I'm a big fan.
You heard it from the pros, peanut butter.
That's a good mix, actually.
Yeah, it is.
I've heard of peanut butter and banana, but peanut butter and apple, not so much.
Great
Oh
mix.
yeah, I'll give that one a go. I always cut the banana in half and then dip it in the peanut butter. That's
Try
a good
the
go-to.
apple, man.
I'll give
Yeah.
the apple a go. I'll give that a go tomorrow morning. Man.
Nice.
That's awesome. So obviously now you have made it to the CFL,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. And aside from the injuries, things are going well and everything's going to plan.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any points in the journey from high school to CJEP into, of course, playing at Western where you had doubts or there was downs, other injuries, things like that really put a damper on whether or not you felt like you could make it?
Yeah, there were a few, and I feel like with every journey, you're always gonna hit obstacles. And realistically, I think if everything went smooth, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be here today, because those are the moments that define you and help you grow. So, but I think the first one was in CJEP. My number one goal was to make it to get a full scholarship in Division I football.
Mm-hmm.
I went to do some camps in the States. I was talking with some universities, and I went really close to get one. Except my last year, I kind of hurt my neck a little bit, missed a week or two, and I lost all interest from those colleges, because why would they take the time to recruit an injury-prone Canadian? It's kind of the reason that they gave to my coach.
Oh, yeah.
And that was kind of tough, because I still feel like I could contribute, and others of our friend made it, and I felt like I could bring something to a team as well, even though I got hurt a little bit. But so that was kind of hard to digest. But luckily, there's great football programs in Canada, and a great ways to develop as a player, even here in our country. So I was able to find a great place at Western to do that. So luckily, I was able to bounce back and go there.
And you oftentimes, even the players that do go from CJEP or high school from Canada, go to the States, play NCAA, they end up coming back to Canada anyway. So, having the opportunity to play football in your home country, I think is still something very, very great to go through. You're still surrounded by your friends, your family, your support system. Going to the States all alone, going maybe to UCLA or down to Florida or anywhere else, Maine, you're kind of all alone in that system, and you could get injured and then nobody really cares about you, right?
No, with hindsight, and we always say hindsight's 2020, but I wouldn't trade my experience that I had at Western for any other experience that's available. And even if you could bring me back 5-6 years ago and say, hey, listen, you're going to get a full ride to that school, I wouldn't take it. I would still take the experience that I had at Western, because it's I can't even explain it in words. It was very, very impactful.
It was where you needed to be, and if it weren't for that, you wouldn't have
exactly.
become who you are, and it wouldn't have led to being here today.
Yeah, exactly.
I got another brutal football question. So obviously the CFL and the NFL have a couple different rules. Is NCAA and the Canadian are those different as well?
Yeah, they're pretty much both university sports are pretty much the same rules as the professional sports. So the university football that we play here in Canada is the same as the CFL, and the NCAA football is pretty much the same as the NFL.
Okay.
There's some slight changes, like in NCAA, I think you only need to put like 1 foot down to make a catch. NFL is 2, because it was too easy for them, I guess. But other than that, the rules are pretty much the same.
Interesting. Okay. And so, is it more difficult then as a Canadian to break into NCAA, seeing as you're playing under different rules?
I want to say, especially for Quebec players, the biggest barrier is school. Our schooling system is so different than their schooling system that for them to take the time to transfer all the grades and be like, okay, what's that worth here?
And
like,
the French,
yeah, is he
just
eligible?
that.
Yeah, a lot of teams don't want to do it. I had to write my SATs, and then I had a few schools that I send them to, and they're like, okay, can you send us our transcript? And they was like, yeah, we don't know what to do with that. Like, we're not gonna waste time, unless you're a freak or like a crazy athlete. If you're just kind of a player that they would look to if you were in the States, but they don't want to waste time doing that with transferring grades from Canada.
Canadians have already a bunch of strikes against them. Add in, that you're French Canadian, that your transcripts are all in French,
it's tough.
and have one game where you're not playing. Ooh, big deal. Then you're
like, we can find an American that's going to do just as good.
Exactly.
As you
right. So for getting from Canada into the States, it's going to be a bit trickier then. As for in Canada, obviously CJEP is, I believe, exclusive to Quebec.
Yeah, it is.
So. and you're a bit older when you finish CEGEP than you are when you finish high school. Do you think that's a bit of an advantage or disadvantage for when it's time to transition into university ball?
I think it's an advantage. We experienced it when we went to Western. You know, we spent 3 years kind of already living on our own, getting that experience of having to provide for ourselves and kind of manage our time a little bit better. Plus, like you said, we're older, and CEGEP, I think, is the best pre-university football league in Canada. So you're playing very high-level football. Some of those teams could compete with some lower grade university level teams. Yeah, just even with age difference. Like if you get like a very mature CEGEP team that plays against a very young university team from another conference, those two teams could kind of could have a good game, you know. So
and also, what's crazy is that we play 4-down football in Quebec up to the end of CEGEP. So you got 20-year-olds playing on a Canadian-sized field, but we got 4 downs, so we're running all the time. You know, sometimes the offensive line on a CEGEP team is going to look the same as an offensive line in terms of size as a CIS team or U Sports team now.
Yeah, it's a very different game. So you get to, I think you become more mature playing CEGEP a few years and then transitioning to university. It definitely helps. And if you look at what most players do that go through CEGEP, they usually, most of them redshirt their first few years in university to get adjusted to that level of play. So I think CEGEP is a good way to grow and not spend those years on the bench not playing, you know.
And for those who don't know, can you explain the concept of the redshirt? Yeah,
so basically, I'm not 100% sure, so my numbers might be a little bit off. But,
right.
I think once you graduate CEGEP or even high school, you got 8 years that you can play
of eligibility.
Of eligibility. So usually what people do in Quebec is that they do 3 years in CEGEP and then 5 years in university. But in Ontario or other provinces, you still got those 8 years, or it might be 7. That's where I'm not too sure.
Okay, right.
But nobody's going to do a degree in 7 years, you know. So usually what guys will do is that they'll spend they'll spend their first 2 years of their eligibility as a redshirt and then still be able to play there for like a full 5 years. So you see guys that play for the same team for 6 or 7 years, and it's totally acceptable.
And they leave university with not only an undergrad but sometimes a post-grad degree. Yep. So that's another opportunity to develop their education. And that's what I really love about football, is that education and the sport go hand in hand. And if you're succeeding on the football field, it's because you're succeeding in the classroom. Because if you're not succeeding in the classroom, you're not on the football field.
Exactly. You need to maintain some sort of average, and even to get your scholarship. So without school, like Lloyd said, you can't play football. So it's a cool way to... and most coaches will encourage school and trying to make you understand that, hey, listen, you need at least that if you want to play for us. So, that's a very cool aspect as well.
So it's super interesting because football is one of the few sports, I guess basketball a bit too, that has a very clear path of how you're going to get from a toddler to, into your little leagues, and then obviously high school, CEGEP, and eventually the CFL. It's a very clear path. Certain other sports, especially like what we're into, is not nearly as linear.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought of it that way. It's pretty interesting. Like for you guys, how does it work exactly? Do you just...
Man, we're still trying to figure it out.
You grind until like you're good enough to get signed, I guess?
So I guess when you're young, and this is for anybody out there trying to make it in scootering, it's not, the goal should never be to make it. You got to do it because you love it. And that's sort of like you said, it was when you started investing your time fully just into being the best football player that you could, that things started to happen. I think it's that you need the same type of attitude. You need to ride because you want to, and you need to jump onto, like, you're not going to jump on a 13 stair or handrail and like risk messing up your ankle or some serious injuries because you want to make it. You have to do it because ultimately that you can, and it's the type of thing that it's going to bother you more if you don't try than if you didn't do it. So I think that a lot of kids, the goal is eventually to get sponsored, but the problem for us is it's such a new industry that there's tons of people who are sponsored who are making $0 at doing it. So to make it, it's become weird because some dudes, it's more about like having a big following on Instagram.
What does making it actually mean?
I think it means like having an income, like a steady income.
Yeah, being able to sustain yourself, I guess, with the sport.
Here's
we got a handful, but
there's not many. But the problem is, for me, it's more about respect. So like if you've earned the respect of your colleagues, like other people, anyone who I respect, I consider has made it.
Yeah,
but
fair.
some people will see it more as like, oh, if you've got 100,000 followers on Instagram and you've got X many sponsors and this and that, you've got X amount of money coming, and then you've made it. So I think that's the big difference, because that's not linear at all. There's not even a clear finish where you guys have a start, you have a middle, and you have an end. And for us, it's just you could disappear from the map at any point and reappear somewhere completely different because all of a sudden you blew up on Instagram, or all of a sudden you had a viral moment at a street jam or something like that. So it's not linear at all. And I guess to go back to the original question, to make it, there is no real definition for us, which is the big difference, I think.
Yeah, well, I think you guys brought up two interesting points. Like Lloyd talked about respect, and Lloyd brought up like what's making it, and then you said like some guys because they blew up, but some of those guys will base, I guess it's outcome versus process in terms of making it, you know? And that's something I had to go through my second year, going into my second year, because our off season is a lot of like reflection on how you can improve. And I was a little bit disappointed with my first season because we didn't make the playoffs. I didn't see the field on defense, and the goals I had for myself, I didn't check them off, you know?
Right.
And I felt like I failed, but at the same time I was like, you didn't really fail. You still got to compete at that level. And going into my second year, I kind of like define success for me as into the process, you know? So if every day I'm able to go in and give the best that I have, regardless of what happened, then to me, that's success, you know? Because there's a lot of things that you won't be able to control, but if you control what you put out, then to me, that's making it. To me, that's what you do, instead of like the number of followers that you got of all that stuff. That's to me, that's not really making it.
And over the years, I've had the privilege to observe your process, and I see it's evolved greatly over the years. You know, in recent years, you talked to me a little bit about it when we hang out, but I think you did a lot of research in what goes into preparing yourself for what's to come as an athlete. You know, you re-engineered your routine. So tell me a little bit about, you know, a week in the life, or even just a day in the life. You know, how does that all go down? What's your routine that builds that success?
Yeah, we can look at it daily. Just for me, it's always about what can I do today? You know, like how can I make the most of today for that? Like, because if my goal is to be like the best football player that I can be, okay, what can I do today that's gonna get me closer to that? So, yeah, I'm almost kind of obsessed with that. You know, like my nutrition is extremely important. So like I'll spend a lot of time kind of thinking, okay, what should I need to eat before my workout, or after my workout, or during my workout, and then how should I watch film? So I'll spend time studying how to study, you know, and kind of like trying to learn the best. I'm always trying to refine that process, and I think that's kind of the next step is like you establish a process that you think is the best, but it's never the best. It's never the best it can be. So I'm always trying to like find ways to make that whole routine better. So my routine today was different than the routine I had yesterday. I'm just always trying to like find new little ways to edge my game up a little bit.
Right.
But it's mostly often just kind of waking up. I'll usually try to go to the gym as soon as possible, or at least do some sort of movement.
Your days start pretty early.
Yeah. My alarm usually rings around 5:30.
5:30.
Yeah, right. 5:30, and just because, especially right now, I have to be there at 7. So, and it's about a 25 minute commute.
And is this Monday to Friday, or this is literally every day?
It's kind of, we don't really, in season, we don't really see the days like Monday to Friday. It's kind of more like game day and then recovery day 1, 2, 3, day before.
All right.
So, but especially when you're injured, it's almost like a everyday thing. I don't think I've had like a day off in weeks just where I didn't have at least treatment in the morning.
Right.
But I don't mind it, because if I might as well get up. You know, if I have something to do early in the morning, you know what, I'm up. So now like I have stuff to do in my day, even if it's just like rest and recovery, but I have more time during the day.
And I mean,
to do that,
taking care of your body and improving your health is part of your job. So literally, all those things are work.
Yeah,
Eating peanut butter.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people, like, I have this discussion with my girlfriend all the time, where it's not a clock in, clock out job.
No,
it's more like a lifestyle. It's a job that requires your whole lifestyle to be adapted around it, and it's something that you need to understand early as an athlete. I think if you want to make it, that it's not something, okay, like when I'm in the building, I'm going to go hard, but as soon as I'm out, I can do whatever I want. It's more like your whole lifestyle is going to affect what you do in between those walls. So, that's the main thing. So
you're your own little business.
Exactly. You gotta,
I was talking with some friends. I'm in my first season of fantasy football. It's going terrible. But my good friend Anis was telling me about our good friend. We actually lived with Anis for a full 2 years. And he was telling me it's like picking stocks for 1 week. You know, it's picking an asset that you think is going to perform well and holding it for a week. And in that sense, every football player is a business that can go up or can go down. And if you look at your performance and your process and your outcome in that way, running it like a business, managing your life like a business, or it's a really good way to approach it. And I think in a way that's what you're doing.
Absolutely. You're touching on a great point. And I think it doesn't just apply to football. I think ultimately it applies to pretty much if you look at yourself the same way you would look at your business, and everything that you do is trying to like up your value and up what you bring to the table, just like a business would do, then things start to make a little bit more sense. You know, you start to enjoy that process a little bit more, and you're like, okay, what can I do to be more valuable to a team, or more valuable to my girlfriend, or more valuable to my family? Like, what can I do to just bring more value to people? So, you're touching on a great point, and it's a great way to put it, especially with fantasy football, like the whole comparison. I like that a lot. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you've actually mentioned, you've actually mentioned your girlfriend twice now. Has she been along for the whole ride?
We started dating in third year of university. She's been along for a little while. She was there for the Vanier Cup run. She was there for the whole draft process, the whole combine process, and all that stuff. So
and even I remember the draft. We were all at Jean-Gab's home in Saint Nicolas. His girlfriend was there. We had our good friend Greg over, and it was crazy because we had no idea where Jean-Gab would end up. He could have ended up in Saskatchewan or BC or anywhere else.
So
and then he moved in and got drafted right beside where I was living, and I was like, "That's I can't even predict this."
No,
and what was great is that Taylor was saying, wherever you go, I'll follow, and that's the type of support that's needed in a career like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
we got really lucky that night. It's still kind of it feels surreal to think back about it, because I had all my family, all my closest friend there. And just when I learned that it was Montreal, I couldn't really believe it.
And you learned that basically at the same time as everybody else, right? I mean, did you have an idea of what could happen? Like, what's that process like going from you guys have finished your final season at Western, playing in the University League, and what's the process like going from that into the NFL, CFL? How do people start, like, you're being approached? Is it just like straight to the combine? Like, what's the transition like?
I was lucky enough to have a great agent, one of the best agents that's available for Canadian football talents. So he kind of guided me through it a little bit. But your season finishes, there's about like a month buffer where you have absolutely no idea, and then they start sending invitations for the combines. So there's the national combine, which there's about like 30 people that are originally invited, and then there's 3 regional combines where they'll pick about 10 to 15 guys from each, maybe sometimes even less, and bring them to the national combine, where there's this whole like weekend event to kind of measure your whole physical abilities.
And is this just Canadian players?
You need to be of Canadian nationality to be invited to that combine.
Okay, cool.
So I learned, I think it was late December, that I was going to go to the national combine. So I kind of had an idea talking with my agent. He thought I had a pretty good shot at making it. So my whole process was just kind of trying to get ready for that, because it's really like a 3-day job interview, and it's not just about, you'll get like a bunch of interviews like we're doing now, like sitting and talking with them, but then you have to go run for them and then perform for them and then like do one-on-ones, and it's a very, very, very crazy weekend. But looking back at it, probably one of the best experiences that you're gonna have to.
And I want to talk about preparation to get into that state where you're performing, and you were talking to me, you've been reading a lot of books about this, about performance, and when you're at your best, when you feel, you're watching a player on TV, or watch Steph Curry knock like 5 3-pointers in a row, and that's flow state.
It is.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, because I think it's a topic you're really, really interested in.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm sure you guys experience it as well with any action sport. You get into that in that zone, and it's easy when you do something that you absolutely love, like football or riding a scooter or rollerblade or anything, skateboard, anything that you're really into, you'll get into that easily. But it's hard to get there with stuff that you're not as
comfortable and familiar with.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it was all about trying to like stay in that state for as long as I could during the weekend, knowing when to step out of it. So as soon as I'd be in my room and be like, okay, like now I can relax, I can be myself, like kind of like let the steam go. But as soon as I step out those doors, like I got to find a way to like zone back in. And that was the hardest process, I think, is to find a way to go in, out. And I don't think I did it very well, but I tried very hard. And I think that's the only thing you can really do. And even to this day, I don't do it very well, but I strive for it, and it's in that process of trying to do it that eventually you get better. It's a little bit like even meditation will be like that. Right. The first time you do it, you have absolutely no idea what you're doing, but the more you do it, the more it makes sense, but it's slow and you're not sure if you're really doing it. But it's just to stick with it and try your best every time, and eventually you get there.
Yeah, and I mean, if you had to define the flow state, I think for me it's just letting things come out as naturally as possible without overthinking it. But what would be your like actual definition of it?
Well, to me, it's kind of you don't really see the time go. You could do that for hours. You're extremely kind of motivated, and you don't want to stop because you're kind of like in that zone. Interestingly, I've had that feeling playing squash a lot. I don't know why. It's like a little like white room, and all you do is like focus on a ball.
Right.
And for some reason, that gets me like right into it. I can play squash for hours because you're just chasing a ball, and the first thing I know, like you're drenched in sweat. And so there's different activities that I guess like they require your focus, and there's a crazy amount of books written onto that, so it's kind of hard for me to just give you like a quick definition of it.
Oh, for sure.
I guess something that takes up all of your focus, and you can really like immerse yourself into the activity is something that would be considered flow state.
I think you mentioned it, like when time stops. It's basically when time stops is when you're actually living in the present, in the moment. There's nothing else going on but what you're doing. And when you think about it, that's transferable directly to scootering and all other action sports. Because when you're on top of that rail that's got like 3 kinks at the bottom, you can't be anywhere else in your mind than right here, right now, because you're going to die. And in a way, the football field is it's a scary place. Like you look 100%. At a kickoff, it's that in a war zone. You got to be on your game, and you got to be in there. Otherwise,
you can't be thinking of anything else than what's going on right in front of you. And like you said, when you step out of like that man-made time of like, oh, it's been like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, is when you really now I'm tapping into something now. Like, and I know like everybody that listens right now experienced that at some point in our lives. And the challenge is to bring it at will. And that's difficult.
It's so hard. I mean, I know there's a few times where I've gone to do something and you're like, okay, we're going to pull up. We're going to go to this spot. We're going to do this thing. And then you're kind of warming up and you're getting into it. But in like the next minute or 5 minutes or whatever it's going to be, as soon as you've committed to it, you have to be in it. And it's weird because I actually had one time where we pulled up to a spot and it's right near my parents' house. I actually still have never done it. And it's the only time I've gone somewhere to do something, and I ended up not even trying it.
Really?
So I ended up getting so into my head about it because it was slightly higher than I would have liked, and you had to jump onto the sidewalk and then jump onto the rail right after.
Okay.
And I knew I was ready to try it, and it was weird because I kept like really wanting to believe that I was about to. Okay, we're gonna try it. Okay, here we go. We're good. Okay, here we go. And then eventually I ended up puking.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was so in my head, and I knew that I wanted to jump on, and I knew it was gonna be either. Well, the fear of the unknown is what got me, I guess, because I knew I wanted to try it, and I knew it was the time to do it. I just couldn't get myself through it, and that's never, ever happened before, and it hasn't happened since. But yeah, I got so in my head.
I figure if you make a plan in your head and try to, script everything that's coming up, it's a form of visualization, but I think it's not the right one. If you get upset as the things you plan aren't happening, then you're doing it all wrong. I think visualization plays a huge role in performance, but it's not, you can't break it down play by play. Like you can't be on the sideline, visualize the next play. There's too many unknowns.
Exactly. And that you brought up a good point. I think visualization needs to be about what's happening inside of you, how you feel when it's happening, other than what's happening outside. Because you can't really, you can never predict what's going to happen, but it's more like, how do I handle to stuff while this is happening? Like, how do I deal with everything that's happening around me? And you just like imagine the feeling, imagine like the emotions that you'll feel and all that stuff, more than like the physical outside of yourself. I think visualization needs to be like about what's happening inside of you while you do that, because that's what you're gonna feel when it happens. And then the more you can recreate that feeling of either it's euphoria or kind of excitement, then that's when you learn You know,
Yeah.
you know that feeling that
the
you
more
felt.
familiar you become with
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
That feeling that you felt before. If you can sit back and think about how you felt and bring
Mm-hmm.
that back onto you, and then learn how to control it,
Yeah.
then once it happens to you, you're more calm. You've seen it before.
Yeah, I
it's,
mean-
it's practice. It's literally like practice.
When we're out riding with riders and they're trying a trick, I sometimes have the tendency to say see it in your head, see it in your head. But what I should be saying is feel it in your head.
Yeah,
feel it in
absolutely.
your body, feel it
Yeah.
in your mind before you do it. Imagine how your feet are gonna feel, how
Yeah.
it's gonna sound. All those little things. And I think you touched on a really good point there.
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
I'll change my verbiage on
It's
that.
a great way, like feeling it more than seeing it it's always how to do it. I think.
At the same time, if you're not feeling it, you probably shouldn't be trying.
Well,
Exactly.
that's also ultimately why I didn't end up jumping on that day. I was
Yeah.
like, something's telling me that this is not going to work, and it's never ever happened before, and it hasn't happened since. And usually, once you've gotten at least on or committed to it the first time, it's like the fear of the unknown is just gone. But getting over that first initial hurdle, especially for us sometimes, especially like when you don't know exactly how it's going to go, or anything that's big enough that every single attempt is you're risking injury.
Yeah.
That's where it gets scary, but it's also where it can get kind of fun. I've had other times where I've done some bigger stuff, and you've got so much adrenaline going that you end up slamming and slamming and slamming. But once that first one is out of the way and you've started committing to it, now it's real, now it's attainable. Now it's go. So, I wanted to know how, I guess we can't talk too much about now, but in the past, what's some of the biggest injuries you've played through in football? Because I've fractured my foot at one time, and then 3 tries after I had fractured it, I ended up getting what I was trying.
Ooh,
And
then
then
it was fractured at that time.
Yeah, I had a fracture in my foot, just didn't know. Got in the car, we're leaving. I was with Marcus, and all of a sudden my foot, I looked down and it's just like my shoe was bigger. And then the next day we went to the hospital, I had a fracture in my foot.
That's flow state.
But I had attained it and I was in it, and there's not like there, as long as I was still up, I was going to keep going. And then sweet, we got it, cool. And then we're in the car maybe 20 minutes later when this is all worn off, and all of a sudden my foot's doing
it's
this,
throbbing.
and my shoe's tight. I was like, we might have a problem here. So what's it been like trying to play through things like that, and does that really mess with your flow state at all?
Well, you touched about it. Like flow state, to me, football brings me into flow state very quickly because I'm so passionate about it that it's kind of like automatic once I'm into the game. There's not a lot of things that will bother me. It's more like after. But I want to say the biggest injury has been my shoulder. My third year at Western, I think third game of the season, I completely dislocated it. And it kind of fully tore my labrum. And for the rest of the season, it kept coming out. It kept coming out at night. Every morning I'd wake up and my shoulder would be out. I'd have to put it back in. And that was the hardest part. And it was kind of hard to get into flow state, especially in like practices and stuff like that.
Because you're worrying about that.
Yeah, and it was hurting. Like all my muscles were tight. So before to get warm and to a point where like, okay, now I'm really focused. And that was kind of a big challenge for me. And especially like in a game, let's say I would step out. Like once I'm on the field, I don't feel it. It's when I step out on the sideline and then the offense is on, and then they have a long drive, and then I have time to like cool down and start thinking about, oh my God, like it's bad right now, you know. But
You don't feel it while you have the adrenaline, but wouldn't it be great if we could just create adrenaline on command or control our mind?
Some people are trying to tap into that. If you look at Wim Hof, I know you're a big fan of Wim Hof. That's what he's kind of preaching is through breathing and cold exposure. He wants to. He claims that you're able to spike your adrenaline at will a little bit. And it would be pretty amazing, but I think it would take a lot of practice and kind of like mind training before you're able to do that.
Maybe that's how the Jedis do it.
Maybe. I wish I could be a Jedi. That'd be
That's
awesome.
got to be it.
Yeah.
Did you? I think you dislocated your elbow as well at one point, if I remember correctly. So
yeah.
you've played games with a
Oh,
dislocated
that was
elbow.
so bad.
That was the first our first year at Western. Lloyd was playing with us. I kind of dove to make a tackle, missed it, put my arm in front of me to catch myself, and my elbow just kind of bent backward.
Like up, like hyperextended?
No, it came down, so like my forearm kind of popped down like that.
Yep.
That was extremely painful. I didn't play with my elbow dislocated. Like once that happened, like I was on the ground kind of yelling, like I knew something was off. I didn't even know what it was. I just knew I had
Something was
crazy pain in my arm. They popped it back in place on the field, and they just gave me a bunch of like painkillers, and I relaxed for a few. I think I missed 2 or 3 weeks, and then they brought a brace. Yeah, they brought a big brace that would kind of. They claimed they would keep my elbow in place all it did was that it wouldn't come out as much. So so it kind of like pop out a little bit and then it would snap it back into place. That was horrible. I played maybe like 5 games with that, but it wasn't very sustainable.
I remember the original injury. You were like lying on the ground, and the trainer came over to kind of lift your arm, and just the forearm lifted.
Yeah.
It was just like there was nothing connecting it. It was gross.
Yeah.
Like you could tell there was something really wrong.
It wasn't very fun.
The fact that you were playing 3 weeks later,
Yeah.
that's a testament to character right there.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I had blind trust into our physios, and they were like, "Listen, like with that brace, you're gonna feel fine." I was like, "Okay, let's try this."
And for you, it didn't matter as long as you got the go. It was go.
Yeah. I guess once I knew that, hey, you know what, this brace is like it's protecting it from getting worse. That's as painful as it's gonna get. Can I deal with that? Yeah. Okay, let's go. Let's do it. So it's always what it's been. And now the more that was, I guess, a little bit young and immature and not the smartest thing to do. As I've grown into a player, I realized that there's some stuff that you need to take seriously. Like my foot right now, like the specialist told me, like don't come back too early. This could haunt you for a while.
Like we were talking about earlier, you're basically a business, and if you're out of business, then you're out of business.
Exactly.
You need to see the long term view with your body.
And the depreciation on your body is,
Yeah.
you see it's like any other inventor, you know, it gets bad at some point. We all grow old. So you're doing your best to kind of hold that off a little bit and kind of make it last a little bit longer. And it's good to have great models. Like we have guys on the team that are 36, 37-year-old. And like, how are you still playing this game? Like I'm 25 and I'm hurting and I'm like all my body.
What do you think makes the difference between these guys?
I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, if I knew right now,
you've been around them in the locker room, like you see a bit of their routines. You've exchanged with them, played with them on the field.
One thing I've seen is they're extremely positive. I see guys like John Bowman is a good example. Martin Bédard, who's also a player on our team, is a good example. These guys are always like happy to be there, and they're always like enjoying the process, I guess. But it's more than just the process. It's like they're enjoying being there, doing that with their lives, and they're trying to stretch that as much as they can, I guess. And no, it's been very inspiring to watch these guys go. Sometimes I feel like I'm down or my body hurts or something, and then I see a guy like John Bowman that's 37 years old and he's jumping over dudes and falling on his head and getting right back up, and that to me is crazy. And I'm just trying to model and trying to take as much as I can from these guys, but still haven't figured out the key.
At least you're working on it. You know, it's constant improvement.
Exactly,
that's the key.
as long as you're working and trying to learn, I feel like you're doing good. And like the moment you stop is the moment that it's kind of.
Moment you think you've succeeded is the moment you start failing.
Yeah.
You know, it's you think you're there, you think you're it. It's not going to last very long. Although, you know, it's fun here and there being like, oh, look back, look at where we are, look at how far we've come.
Yeah.
It's important to do that, but you know, get right back to work when it's time, because most of this process is work. You got to enjoy that.
Yeah.
You know?
And like you said, the moment you settle is the moment you're kind of done, you know. And it doesn't have to be you can settle with your job. You can be happy with the job that you have. But if you're like, all right, then I'm just going to get up in the morning, go to my job, come back home, and then do that over and over and over again, that's when there's a problem.
Right.
If you're like, okay, you know what? I'm really happy with my job. I'm really happy with what I'm doing. What can I do outside of my work that's going to help me grow as a person? You know, you can have a bunch of different spheres in your life that you're, okay, you know what? This part of it I'm really happy with for now. I'm going to grow this part of my life and see how far I can go into this. And then maybe that's going to change your perspective on that one part of your life. And then you're going to come back and revisit that. But I think, the moment as a person, you're like, you know what? Me right now, I'm perfect the way I am. I don't need to grow anymore. Then I think, that's the problem. That's when you start failing, like you said. But
Well, speaking of perspective, one question I had, obviously you've been playing football a very, very long time. The goal is ultimately to make it to the CFL. What's the biggest difference between stepping on the field in a school game and your very, very first time stepping on the field as a professional football player? Did it feel different at all? How long until it just felt like a normal game again, or does it still feel different?
The game itself is the same. Wherever you play, it takes the same kind of skill set, the same kind of attitude. But the motivation and the perspective is kind of different. You know, when you play for a school, you represent your school. Usually you chose to be there. You're surrounded by friends, family, and people that are like very close to you, and you're playing to represent them.
Right.
Once you're a professional, then you're they're paying you to be there. You're expected to do a job, and like you said, you're a business now. So the focus is more internal on how can I be the most valuable to the team. And I guess it's similar to what you do in school, but it's hard to explain. But there is a difference in terms of the approach.
And is it still different, or it's the thing that stays different, or it was just kind of an adjustment?
It was kind of. I'm getting closer and closer to that feeling of just playing in a school, but I don't think it's ever going to be the exact same because there's the whole money and business aspect of it. Like the moment you step into that team, they're trying to replace you. You know, they're trying to find like a cheaper, better player, and if they find one, you're out. In a school, it's not really like that. You know, you get that feeling of how do you say
community,
like, community and appartenance. How would you say that in
belonging?
Yeah, you get that feeling that they want you there and they're trying to make you grow. And the moment you step into a pro team, is like, how can we get better investment for our money? Because they're a business as well. It's a bunch of like different businesses, and you're like a contractor. Like they're just paying you a contract to do the work. But if they can find somebody cheaper that's going to do a better job, you're gone the next day. You know, and that's something that it's always in the back of your mind. You know, everything we do is filmed. You go into the film room, it's analyzed. And like I said, if they don't like what they see and they can find somebody that about the same price or a little bit cheaper, you're out right away. So
one of the differences in university, you play with the same guys for 4 years in a row. You know, sometimes 6 or 7 if you've played together before. And but in the locker room in a pro team, you know, you're making a couple friends. The next week, one of them might be gone, and then you're like, "Oh, like how did this happen?" And then you're like, "How did you deal with that little transition?"
That's another, and that just adds to the whole feeling of, okay, this is more of a business than a community or a family.
The environment in the locker room, or seeing people come and go, or both.
Well, the environment in the locker room is great, especially now in Montreal. We got great guys all around, but there's still a lot of rotation. You know, there's guys that you see for a few days and they're gone, and they bring new guys. And I want to say there's about like 10 spots on the team that are always like on rotation. Guys will be there for a few weeks and they're gone. And it kind of, if you look back at the team that we had at the end of training camp and the team that we have now, a few months later, very different. There's maybe like 15 guys that were there that are not there anymore. Injuries happen in such a long season and that's why your focus has to be more on the value that you can bring to the team and see yourself as a business and just being able to provide the best service for your client, and your client is the football team. You know, so it's kind of like the approach that you need to have, as if university is kind of like, okay, these are almost brothers. You know,
this is your family.
Yeah, exactly, and you're more accountable to them than you are accountable for yourself. I guess it's not really the right way to say it, because you're always accountable for yourself, and the best way to be accountable for them is to be accountable for yourself. But it's just a different perspective a little bit, I guess.
Like when it's time to play through a really gruesome injury, I think that it's no question that in university, when you're playing with your friends that you've built friendships with over years and years, you're like, I'm definitely going to go on that field. I don't care what the trainer says. I'm playing.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be there. You want to support. As if when it happens in the pro level, you're like, okay, right now I'm not being the best value I can be to the team. I'm not being very valuable as a business. Then I need to take the time to recharge and grow that value back again before I can go back. As if university, you just need to be out there. You need to find a way to help. You know, and it's kind of, I guess the same approach could be taken in university, you know, if you're not the best value that you can be, but it's just a different approach. You know, you don't get that sense until you get to the pros where you're like, okay, you know what, this is different.
As much as you guys are, you know, CFL is a business, football teams in the CFL are businesses. I have a feeling when I come to see your games that you guys have a pretty tight unit. You know, you seem to be having fun together on the field.
Absolutely.
What do you think's the difference between last year and this year, and what kind of success you've been able to have?
Well, we have a great locker room, and I think we've come really close, regardless of that whole business aspect and the stress that it brings to people. We were able to come together as a team, and that's a lot to speak about our coaches. Our coaches are doing a great job of putting in a position where they're letting us have fun. They're letting us like be together and bond and kind of have like good quality time together, not overtraining us or overdoing stuff like that. Like we're able to bond and have a team. And I guess that's the biggest thing to me, is just to be able to spend time with your teammates and quality time, you know, because in university, you're always with your teammates. You know, everybody's at the stadium, everybody's on campus. You see people all the time. You live with most of them. Like right now, I don't live with anybody on the team, and I see them like during the day, but It's
That's
like
not true. You guys do have a few units all in the same
Yeah,
building, so
true.
you guys have a bit of a community
True.
there.
Yeah, we do.
And I think that's actually helping.
yeah, and there's maybe like 3 or 4 buildings across Montreal where guys are staying. Like not a lot of guys are kind of like alone in their own. Like there is some guys, but
Right.
most guys live around each other. There's often more than one guy in one building, and it definitely helps. And you know, the coaches do a great job of like picking the character that they bring into the locker room as well. Because like if the moment you start bringing like bad character or like cancers, if you want, into the locker room, that's when it starts to divide people. But it's all about the coaches and the scouts that bring great character guys that just fit right in, and then you can just like keep growing as a club.
Right. So obviously, like you said, the character that's brought into the locker room is a big deal. What's the biggest difference for someone who you consider a leader on a pro team versus someone who's a leader in, say, a school team?
To me, they're the same.
Yeah.
A leader is a leader, and it's mostly by. I believe leadership is just by example, you know, and by you lead by example, and you're willing to help as much as you can, you know. So you do your things, you do the things the
Right.
best that you can, and then if people come up to you and ask for help, or you see somebody doing that's not necessarily right, then you go see them and you help them get better, you know. So to me, a real leader is somebody that brings people around, makes people around him better. It's not about that person, it's about helping the people around them, either by showing the right example or giving valuable advice or stuff like that. So to me, they're the same in any locker room and at any level. It's just somebody that inspires people to do the right things.
And you know, leadership's not a title. It's
Yeah.
something. It's something that you just naturally do. And
Yep.
you know, over the years, in all of your school career, you were captain of most of the teams throughout the years that
Yeah.
you've played for. And I think that experience has really allowed you to bring that leadership skill to the Al's locker room,
Yeah.
and really contribute in a way without all the recognition, without all the bells and whistles, that you're a leader in your own way, and it's all to your advantage, you know.
Thank you. And I think that at that level, a lot of guys are leaders, and a lot of guys are just doing the right things. Ultimately, a leader is somebody that he's doing the right things all the time. And
Right.
if you can always look up, okay, what should I do right now? You look up to the guy and he's doing what you should be doing. And it kind of helps guide people that are not necessarily sure, and kind of helps grow the culture of the environment that you want. You know, you have this idea of what you want your organization to be, and it's just somebody that follows those guidelines, you know, and then people can kind of like, okay, that's how we do things. And eventually, if everybody buys into that culture and those guidelines that you built
Yep.
of how you do things, then that's how you're successful. So everybody is a leader in
In their own way.
their own way,
Right.
and the actions that they do. There's positive leaders, there's negative leaders. At the moment you influence someone to do something, whether it's good or bad, you're leading.
You've led them in a direction. Yeah,
exactly.
100%.
So, I think, like Lloyd said, it's not a title. Like, you're a leader. Everybody's leading people in different ways, like you said. So
Either up or down.
either up or down. Yeah. So, and there's, like you said, either up or down. There's never like the status quo is not really a thing, especially in sports. So,
Right. So obviously we've been talking a lot about sports, but one thing I would like to touch on, because we are actually rounding out the hour here. Obviously, we're not going to ask a timeline or anything for when you think you'll still be in the CFL, but do you have plans after the CFL to stay involved in football, or is that something that you think that once the time, whenever it be, and the CFL has come to a close, that it's going to be like a closed book, the end of a chapter and on to something else?
I think I'm always going to be involved with football because I love it so much. I don't know at the pro level because the business aspect of it is not necessarily something I'm very passionate about. If I stay involved with football, which I want to do, it would be in the younger levels, maybe CJEP, even university, high school,
Right.
To trying to help guide those kids that maybe are going through the same path, or maybe not, just be able to influence those kids in positive ways, without the whole like, hey, listen, I'm paying you, you need to do your job. If you're not doing your job at the university level, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to help you do your job the best
Right,
way.
right.
It's not like, okay, you're out.
It's not, we're going to find someone to do it. We're going to
Exactly.
make sure that you can do
Yeah,
it.
I'm going to help you, and that's the kind of approach that I like. Let me help you get better, whether it's school, whether it's your relationships with people, anything. I want to be there to be able to help. And I think sport is a good way to do it.
And in the off season, in your first off season, you had the opportunity to go around schools with
Yep.
a bunch of your teammates and inspire the next generation. How is the next generation looking? How do you feel about the future of football?
The future, we didn't go touch about football that much. Yes, we were doing like this thing called Ultimate Football. We went to about 50 schools and we just played football with the kids. But I think football is growing. There's a lot of great players that are being brought up in Canada right now that are going back and coaching and going back and helping out. So I think football is going to continue growing if we can find a way to destigmatize it with the whole concussion scare. I think youth football right now is affected, but
for sure
we have guys in every team, and on our team, Olivier Turcotte, he's doing an amazing job at organizing clinics where he'll talk to parents and explain the different techniques that we teach on how to make football safer and all that stuff. So we're trying to destigmatize it and bring down the whole level of like, oh my God, concussions, and then you're going to ruin your life playing football. And I think it's looking good. I think there's still work to be done. But yeah, it was a very, very amazing experience to be able
There's
to go
many
inside
ways to ruin your life, but one thing's for sure is that if you play football and you stick with it, it's going to improve your life in significant ways.
Exactly.
And that's what we got to communicate. You know, it's not because a sport is risky that it's not worth doing.
Yeah, and I agree that there was a problem with it, but it's being addressed.
Yes.
And as long as the problems are being addressed, then you're in the right path, and that's what we're aiming for. So.
All right, so one last thing to touch on here, obviously speaking of problems to be addressed, one thing that I always found interesting is the concept of watching film in football. I'm sure some pro NBA players watch a bit of things back, but football is the one sport where people are constantly watching film. And I used to think, like, if you're going to be a coach, you've got to love it, because not only are you going to practices, but you're coming home, you're sitting down, and you're always watching film. I mean, what are you looking at when you're watching film for the most part?
Well, a football game is almost like a chess match. You know, there's a lot of guys on the field, a lot of different. So there's many levels at which you can watch film. You can watch film to watch the schemes that they bring, like what plays do they run in general, and then you can watch it on an individual level. Okay, is he telling off some sort of keys with the way he plays on what they're trying to run? What technique does he use? Because football is like 12 on 12, but then it's 12 individual battles, you know? So how can I win that battle against that guy? So there's a bunch. That's why you can watch film for so long.
Forever.
You can spend 40 hours just watching schemes, and then 40 hours just watching techniques, and then 40 hours just watching keys. So there's more film than you can watch.
And just like you said, there's more film than you can watch. Obviously, breaking it down, you're looking at individual matchups, and then things will be based on whether you're third and short or fourth and long, what's going to be run. Is there more and more? Do you think there'll be more and more of like some sort of AI or computer crunching data?
Oh, there is. It's still used. It's been used for years now. We have that all the time. We'll wake up we get up usually on day one, and they have like a package for us. Okay, here's what they've been running in the past 4 games: 60% run on first down, 40%, like those kind of runs. So that when we line up on second down, we're like, okay, second down, they're in that formation. 80% chance that's the play they're gonna run. And then as a team, a lot of teams like self-scout and be like, okay, what are our tendencies? How do we break them? How do we like go along those tendencies, and then like just to like bait them into doing it, and then like break them off. So it's really like a chess match, and that's when it gets so interesting. There's so much. It's such a deep sports in terms of what you can do with so many guys at the same time that it's pretty cool.
So I guess if you really love football and you want an excuse just to watch football all the time, become a coach.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, believe it or not, this actually does round out the hour. It did fly by. I think we'll definitely have to have you back on at some point.
That was awesome. That was a great discussion.
Super fun. So on Instagram, it's at Jean-Gab Poulin.
Yeah, exactly.
And Montreal Alouettes. I'm definitely going to try to make it out to a playoff game this season. Maybe Lloyd will take me to one, explain a bit more.
That'd be awesome.
What's going on as
Let's
we
do
go.
it.
Yeah,
I
can probably get tickets for you guys as well. So if you guys let me know a little bit in advance, maybe playoff game, that'd be awesome.
Sweet. We've got it on camera, so you better.
I was going to say that.
Well, any shout outs before we call it a day?
No, well, just to you guys, man. That's awesome. Keep doing what you're doing, and keep expanding your audience and the people that you have on the show. I think that we can find a lot of similarities into different sports and different like spheres of life. So I think it's a really cool thing that you guys are doing, and keep doing it, man. It's awesome.
Cool, man. We appreciate that. Obviously, we stepped a bit out of our realm today, but we were able to draw some similarities and draw some cool stories out. Same thing to you, Lloyd. Any shout outs before we call it a day?
Appreciate the Alouettes for letting us have Jean-Gab on the show.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's great to have the opportunity to speak with you
cool.
in this setting. You know, obviously being a professional football player, we had to clear this with the team, but really appreciate it. Thank you, Jean-Gab, for coming over and bringing all your your feedback and your perspectives.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Very interesting.
Awesome. Well, I guess that's going to be a wrap. That's going to do it for episode number 8 of the podcast presented by Trynyty. As usual, Cody LaCroix, Lloyd Burrow signing off. Don't forget, @RideTrynyty, thetrynyty.com. And we're going to keep this thing going every other Thursday. The next episode will be out. So until then, we'll catch you on the next one.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks for watching.